Welcome back to the Dry Fasting Club. I'm Yannick Wolf, and today we're going to be talking about how to hack dry fasting with T3 therapy. This is very important. This is going to be the intro into T3 therapy, which is such an important part of the Scorch protocol. It came a little bit later during the later stages, but at this point, I would say that it is the most important part other than dry fasting. The Scorch protocol has a few things, but T3 therapy is just as miraculous as dry fasting. When paired together, you unlock something that nobody in the world has yet unlocked, or at least not to this level. It is truly one of those ancient secrets. Dry fasting in itself is an ancient miraculous secret, but it also comes with some drawbacks. Everything does. T3 is another weird miraculous treatment that maybe has a few little drawbacks, but overall has so much positive. When you pair them together, their negatives cancel out and you get the best of both worlds. So strap in. This is going to be a very important one. We're going to touch on T3. We're going to say why T3, how fasting suppresses it, why we do it, issues that can go wrong with it, when is it dangerous, how you should approach it. This is a huge topic. We're going to slowly dive into it. Not everything in the first episode. I'll probably do it in series, but this is going to be the introduction one. So strap yourselves in. Okay, so let's start it off. Why T3? T3 is a thyroid molecule, okay? A lot of people have heard of thyroid hormones, hormonal treatment. It's actually one of the most prescribed medications in the United States, and in general, it's very highly prescribed around the world. Last time I looked at it, the numbers were something like 20-something million Americans are on Thyroid, which is a T4 medication. I'll post something up here. You'll see how T4 goes from T4 to T3, and then it breaks down to T2 and T1. If you're interested in this, I highly recommend that you spend a little bit of time just digging in a little bit deeper into the thyroid system and understanding what is T4, what is T3. But basically, T4 is the storage hormone. T3 is the actual active hormone that does good stuff in the body. And some people look at the thyroid as the temperature switch in the body, like a thermostat. If your thyroid's high, you're warmer. If it's low, you're colder. If your thyroid's too high, you're hyperthyroid. If your thyroid's too low, you're hypothyroid. Both of these can be dangerous, right? You mostly hear about people being hypothyroid. You hear about women giving birth and going through traumatic experiences and suddenly gaining weight and can't control it. And a lot of them say, "Oh, it's my hormones," when it's very often related to thyroid. You also see nowadays women getting T4 supplementation during pregnancy, which you didn't have to see which didn't occur before. And there's books about this. If you're interested in fertility and pregnancy and thyroid, I recommend getting a book called Hypothyroidism, The Unsuspecting Illness by Broda Barnes. Amazing book. And it's written so well that you're going to just enjoy reading. It's not one of those dense books, and it has tons of, not stories, but accounts, specific accounts for under every single chapter. He talks about different people that had those problems, infertility, miscarriages, migraines, dementia, chronic fatigue, everything. It's really good. It's the basis of actually Ray Peat's obsession about thyroid. So start there. When it comes to fasting, you have to realize that fasting suppresses the thyroid system. This is so important to understand, because people actually don't understand this really well. Yes, that is a good thing for someone that's hyperthyroid. So if you know anyone in your life with hyperthyroidism, aka they can't gain weight, those super skinny, almost sickly people, they're dealing with thyroid overproduction, okay? Fasting is a cure for that in the fact that it lowers your TSH and it suppresses your thyroidal system. Why does it do that? Because it automatically plays on your body's survival adaptation mechanisms. If there's no food around, the body needs to use less energy. Hyperthyroid equals using way too much energy. Fasting reels it back in. But now what happens when you're already kind of dealing with hypothyroidism, which a lot of people are, especially with chronic illness? Well, fasting can suppress it even more. And then the question becomes, how do you bounce back out of it? And that's why I used to be ambivalent, ambiguous about what type of diet you should be eating after fasting. But nowadays I am enlightened and 100% committed to only refeeding with a high carb type diet. And I don't like saying that because some people think that means they can binge on high carbs right after the diet, but that's a very dangerous thing to do. Coming out of a fast, it has to be a gradual reintroduction, and that really includes everything. That's why those refeeds are so tough, and why refeeding after a long dry fast is the hardest thing about this whole process. It's not the prep, it's not the fast, it's the refeed, because you're starving. Once you touch a little bit of juice, a little bit of food, now you're going to feel what the demons taking, like what it feels like when demons take possession of your body, because you are going to be overtaken by ravenous, demonic hunger. It's just your body telling you it wants to eat. But unfortunately, this is also where you have to control it and you have to bring it back gradually. And that sucks. It's the hardest part. But if you do that correctly, you reawaken your thyroidal system. And our hope here is that you can bring it back to the pre-fasting level. And in certain cases, higher than that, especially if you're dealing with chronic illness, which has suppressed your thyroid. The fast is supposed to clear blockages. It's supposed to improve it. So pair that with the hope of the carbs over time, bringing back the thyroidal system. You'll be hopefully in the same spot, minimum in the same spot as when you started the fast, but hopefully in an even better spot, and your metabolism improves and your whole body starts thriving. But that's also why you see a lot of people saying that it takes so long for the refeed, but the healing actually occurs over months after a dry fast. And you keep hearing that months and months. You see discussions of people, like I talk to a lot of people that go to Filanov and they don't see the healing they want. They're missing something. And I'm telling them very often it is the T3 therapy is your missing pièce de résistance. It is the missing piece, and it is crazy. So they'll come back, and missing piece is T3 because yeah, for some people, the T3 will come back after 6 months, dieting, but some people don't have that time. And for some people, it won't come back. And that's another thing I want to segue quickly off of. Different people, different races will react to these situations differently. Black people have less propensity to fall into this starvation problem because is genetically, ancestrally, who knows? It looks like their ancestors did not go through as many famines as, let's say, Northern Europeans. Northern Europeans consistently had to live through famines, ice ages, winter comes, you run out of food. What the hell do you do? If you don't live by the ocean to hopefully fish, you're done. People died out that didn't have an adaptation genetically to be able to survive the starvation situations. What does that mean? Really slowing down the body and slowing down the metabolism to conserve energy. The people who had more fast twitch muscles, first thing when I hear fast twitch muscles, I think of black athletes that have more fast twitch muscles than white athletes. If you had too much fast twitch muscles, your body used up all your energy too quickly and you died before the more slow twitch muscle people in your village. So obviously the genetics get passed down, and now white people in general have less of those things, but that also means that they have the gene for slowing down, right? But when it gets activated, for some people, it's so aggressive that it can never come back, regardless if you eat carbs or not. And that's where the T3 is your last lifeline if this occurs to you. If you're chronic illness, if you're chronic fatigue, if you don't heal correctly after multiple long dry fasts, T3 is your missing link. I hope I've made this very clear. T3 drops by up to 55% within 24 hours of fasting. That's very important. Another thing that I want to dive in deeper in another episode is that there are studies on rats showing that if you give them not supraphysiological dosing, but minuscule small doses of T3, let's say the equivalent for humans is something like 5 to 10 micrograms per day during a fast, or at least during a 48-hour fast, you eliminate almost all muscle loss. Because there is muscle loss with fasting. We know dry fasting jumps into the deep ketosis much quicker than water fasting. So there should be less muscle loss on a 3-day dry fast compared to a 3-day water fast. Okay, are you with me at this point? I know I'm jumping around quite a bit. So we got to keep all of this in mind. It slows down a lot. The T3 during a fast is very interesting, but this is experimental territory. I do not advise anybody to do this. I myself am probably going to do this on my next fasts. But if somebody's really sick and chronically ill at this point, I wouldn't experiment with that. Your job is to get through the dry fast and then do a cycle of T3 therapy. If you want to know more about T3 therapy, you're like, hey, I want to start it right now. Like, I literally want to know as much as I can about this. I have an article on the forums. Okay. Let's put a link up on the page, on the screen here. And if you go to the forums under lessons, there's a T3 one of 50 questions and answers that go in a graded fashion. So right from where you would start to the treatment basics, to continuing to protocol execution, side effects, and then the final monitoring and following up. It's there. Check it out. Another question that I want to address before we end this video, I don't want it to go too long, is what if I have normal blood tests? Okay, this is the problem, because I consulted with so many people, and it's really hard to get this point across. Like, I try to make it. In the beginning, when I was consulting, I was not 110% convinced. I was 90% convinced that T3 was the way to go for everybody. So I would always bring it up. But because I wasn't 100% convinced as I am now, maybe it didn't go through to them as persuasively as now. But they would basically ask me, they would be wary of taking the T3, right? The beautiful thing is that T3 is a natural hormone, and our body actually can, if you do it correctly, you pace onto it and you pace off of it, the body completely comes back. And in fact, most times you actually improve your thyroidal system after you go off of it, and it completely resets. So anyways, they're scared, right? So they're asking me, what tests should I take to make sure that this is going to be safe for me? I'm going to take thyroid tests. And the logic is that they're hoping to see that there's an issue with their TSH, or there's an issue with their T3 or T4 or reverse T3. Maybe they'll find out they have Hashimoto's. This is a good idea. Everybody should be taking a full thyroidal panel just to identify issues before they start messing with it with T3. That's just good practice. Even though I've long advocated that I am not someone that is a diehard blood test guy. I think that from a practical perspective, most people can't really, truly get to a doctor, get all their tests done. Either it's too hard to get to a doctor, too expensive, too time consuming, something happens. So I prefer treating based on symptoms. And this is a really beautiful thing. T3 therapy can be, and is encouraged to be done through symptom management and symptom recognition, tracking your temperature, how you feel, which is a very important thing. Although sometimes tracking just how you feel is not that good, as anybody on the carnivore diet will tell you that they feel like superhuman, and that means that diet is the best diet for you, even though just because you feel great on a diet does not mean that it is actually good for you in the long run. It's a very hard concept to understand, but in general, I do like to follow how your body feels. It's important when treating. And with T3 therapy, it is exactly that. Where was I? Did I miss anything? Yeah, okay. Before we wrap it up, so the TSH and the blood tests. When you get your thyroid panel, for a lot of people that have been fasting for a very long time or with long-term chronic illness, the tests come back perfectly fine. Your TSH is in range. So they're like, okay, I'm not going to give you T4. Don't even ask your doctors about T3 unless you have a really close relationship or if they're a rock star endocrinologist, because otherwise they literally just regurgitate T4 stuff that they're taught in medical school. Even if your T3 is fine and your reverse T3 is in the right levels, doesn't mean your body's utilizing them correctly. When you fast or when you're in caloric starvation for a really long time or chronically ill, it suppresses your TSH. It fakes out the blood test. It pretends that it is in the right range. And that is the basis for so many problems that go undiagnosed. So I want you to realize that if you do the oral temperature is the most important part. You'll see that in the protocol that I link to you on the forums. Check it out. It says you want to take your oral temperature, you want to average upon waking, before rising, mid-afternoon and before bed. You want to have 98.6 Fahrenheit, which should be something like 36.6 Fahrenheit. It should be hitting much higher after eating. That indicates that your body is utilizing the food correctly and it's reacting correctly to it. And most people will come back and they'll say they have a low body temperature. That is enough. Even with perfect blood tests, if you have any chronic illness, any symptoms of some sort of problem and low temperatures, T3 therapy is something you have to try. I recommend it 110%. Okay, I'm going to call it here for now. If you have a bunch of questions that you want to see in the next video when I talk about T3 therapy, please put them in the comments. Thanks for stopping by. Remember, dry fasting is a powerful tool. T3 therapy is another powerful tool in your toolbox to conquer this confusing world and to get back your health. Good luck on your dry fasting journey. See ya.